Hi everybody, so today we're going to be doing a watercolor lip. It's a very basic version, so I think beginners will be able to do it perfectly. The materials that I used for this will be in the description below. You need to get your lips drawn out, so I drew these by first drawing a line across the middle here. I chose to place my lips a little bit more to the right because I didn't want the lips completely centered on the page. Once I drew a little curved line over here, I then drew the Cupid's bow up here. And once I got this the way I wanted it, I then drew the two lines going down the sides over here. I then drew a curved line at the bottom for the lower part of the lip, and this part is completely optional, but I chose to have my lips open, so I drew another line going across the top like this, and then inside here you might be able to see that I drew out some lines for the teeth. You then want to make sure that you draw a line to show where the edge of the face is. I also added a little hint of a nose here, so I drew this line at the bottom, and then I drew two more curved lines at the edge. Let's get straight into the tutorial. So the first thing you want to do is rub out the lines of the pencil that you've drawn in. Preferably use a putty rubber because it will prevent the paper from being lifted out, but if you don't have one of those, use a normal rubber, it'll be perfectly fine. Next, you want to mix water with red and orange. If you want the colour to be lighter, add more water in and less of the pigments. If you want it to be darker, add less water in, or if you've added a little bit too much by accident, add more of the pigment in. You're going to build up your colour from the lightest colour to the darkest colour, so after mixing your lightest colour, using a wet paintbrush onto dry paper, lay out your first layer of paint. Then mix a darker version of the very same colour and drop in colours around the edge of your lips. The point behind this is that the darker colour should mix in with the lighter colour, but if by this point your first layer of paint is relatively dry, go back in with a wet paintbrush to help the darker colour mix in with the lighter one. For the skin tone, I mixed the brown with a hint of orange. I added the orange in because my lip colour also had orange in, and just including orange in all of the colours that I mix will allow the tone of each colour to stay consistent with each other, so you don't end up with, for example, cold colours mixed in with warm colours, which wouldn't really make sense, especially if you think from a makeup point of view. If you have a warm skin tone, you want warm makeup colours. If you have a cold skin tone, you're going to suit cold colours much better. Same thing applies here. Once you have your skin tone ready, lay a wash over the nose areas. And for the edge of the face, we're going to use a slightly different technique. We are going to use a wet paintbrush on dry paper, so wet on dry, and we're going to add the darkest part of your colour on the edge of the face. And then you're going to wash off your brush, make sure that it is still wet, and go back into the paint to help spread it outwards. This should help you keep a nice dark colour around the edge, but then to have this brilliant blend that goes inwards onto the skin. A key point to remember throughout this tutorial is that the darkest part is painted on first, and then a brush with only water on it is used to spread the paint outwards. Going back to the lips now, once they are completely dry, use a damp paintbrush to lift the colour out to help clean up the edge of the lips. Lifting the colour out is simply removing colour that you don't want on the page anymore. Again, add the skin tone colour in the area shown as before. Moving back to the lips, again always waiting for the original layer of paint to dry completely, which can take maybe 2 to 3 hours, depending on how much water you've used. Using the same colours, mix a darker shade for the lips and start placing the colour on the edge of the lips, wet on dry. Once the colour that you've added to the lips are slightly dry, so maybe wait about 30 seconds, make sure your paintbrush is damp and start spreading out the edge of the colour to help remove any harsh lines. Once it's dry, go in again with an even darker colour. Now go in with a darker skin tone colour on the face using the same technique as before. For the shadow colour that I'm putting under the nose, mix a dark brown, again with a hint of orange to keep the undertone of the colours consistent. Always remember to add the colour on first using the wet on dry technique, then use a damp or wet brush and blend out the colour to remove the harsh lines on the edge. For the teeth, I mix blue with, you guessed it, orange. Remember, if you make a mistake, you can use a tissue to lift the colour out if the paint is still wet, or if it's dry, use a damp brush to lift the colour out. Going again with a darker colour for the lips. At this point, you just want to keep on adding darker colours in if you think it's necessary, but beware, do not overload your paper with paint because you can lose that brilliant translucent that watercolour creates. Unfortunately, there's no hard and fast rules that I can think of to help you know when to stop. It just comes with experience to understand when to stop painting. Now for the fun part. Using Tipp-ex, add in the white shadows. This is what makes your lips look luscious. If you don't have a Tipp-ex around, that's okay. You can always use a white gel pen, or masking fluid can be used in the beginning to create the white spots. You can also use white watercolor paint, but you won't get that brilliant opaque white. It'll be slightly translucent. And now we're done. Pretty basic. In hindsight though, I wouldn't have put as many white highlights on the lips as I did because I covered up most of the layering that we did before, which sort of defeats the purpose of the layerings. So if you are recreating this design, I would highly recommend you don't add as many highlights in. There's nothing really left for me to say. If you have any comments, please let me know below. But other than that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.